Is Maine Democrat Graham Plattner officially cooked as a candidate? President Trump says the Iran ceasefire is likely over. And we reflect on 250 years of America. And the left, they've never been more miserable about it. It's Wednesday, July 8th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. Hope you'll keep up to date with all the latest news every day and all week long at the brand new heartlandernews.com. My name's Chris Stigall. We start this morning with some breaking news as we record today. The president is speaking at the NATO summit and had this to say in an interview about the current situation with Iran and the ceasefire. Take a listen.
Is the ceasefire over? Is the ceasefire done? Is the MOU dead?
That's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators. They want to negotiate. They're good people. Steve Woodcoff, Jared Kushner. But they have to come back to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a waste of time dealing with them. They're liars. We make a deal. And if I make a deal with him, we have a deal. And he goes out, he talks. We make a deal. Everyone's agreed. No nuclear weapon. We make a deal. They go outside, talk to the press. They say, we never even talked about it. There's something wrong with them. They're cuckoo. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
And at present, oil futures are reacting to that. We were starting to see gas prices coming back down to some relatively more familiar levels. Oil prices hovering near pre-conflict levels as of yesterday after OPEC Plus agreed to increase production again, adding to global crude supplies as exports through the strait continued to recover following months of disruption. The Oil Producing Alliance said it will raise output targets by 188,000 barrels per day, beginning in August, making its third consecutive monthly increase as it gradually unwinds production cuts implemented in 2023. So what does this mean with the president making those comments today? Oil prices had been trending down, production coming back, but now with this, what does that mean? We don't know for sure. Just wanted to start the show today by mentioning that. The U.S. military said it struck Iranian military targets in the area of the strait today in retaliation for renewed Iran attacks on commercial ships. The exchange of fire, writes Axios, risks plunging the United States and Iran into a new cycle of retaliation, threatening the fragile memorandum of understanding signed by the president. The Iranian military said it would deliver a crushing response to the U.S. strikes. The statement said Tehran would not allow U.S. interference in management of the strait. Meanwhile, President Trump is at that NATO summit and unloaded on Western European allies as disloyal partners who were not there for us during the Iran conflict, despite America's largesse in bolstering mutual defense. Trump taking shots at America's military partners at the start of the two-day summit in Turkey. And he'll pivot to commitments to defense spending and whether Ukraine and Russia can settle their 4-year war. So this is not, I wish I could tell you as we start today and this NATO summit, I wish I could tell you this is positive development. It doesn't sound very positive. Many people did not believe, actually, that this was ever really going to be positive. Many people were always of the belief that Iran couldn't be trusted. They were never good actors. Any memorandum of understanding was effectively meant to be broken, that President Trump counted on them ultimately breaking it, and that perhaps as many, by the way, many hawkish people would say they wanted the job finished. They wanted Iran pulverized. Is that what comes of this? I don't know. Regime change was never something the president stressed he wanted to do. And many critics have always said that regime change wars have gotten us nothing but meat grinders of our men and women who serve, as well as billions and billions and billions of dollars wasted. And so the country often says when polled, they don't have an appetite for what are now commonly called regime change wars. But after President Trump had that memorandum of understanding, as you recall a few weeks ago, the criticism was, I wish he'd just take out their leadership and finish the job. As long as the theocracy stays in charge of Iran, they're always going to be bad actors. They can never be trusted, and we'll be right back here again. Given these developments, is that argument correct? I don't know. Time will tell. It remains to be seen. It's not a positive development for those of us who are watching gas prices. I'm well aware of that. So we will continue to monitor it here, and I encourage you to stay at heartlandernews.com all day for all the very latest. Journalists there working all day and all week long, bringing you up to date on all the latest stuff. And by the way, written through a prism of journalism that you can actually trust. That's the whole point of heartlandernews.com, so I hope you'll check it out. Meanwhile, the 4th of July, we took a couple of days away to celebrate Independence Day. I hope you had a great one, 250 years of our great country. Hope it was something you enjoyed with friends, family. Maybe you got some time to reflect on what that means. I know I did. It was a remarkable thing. 250 years, this country. It's not that old. I went to see Young Washington. I highly recommend that film. The Angel Studios people made that. Kelsey Grammer is in it. It's a story about who Washington was as a young man before he became the general and president that the nation all came to know him as. It was a fascinating thing, talking about how he just kind of a hard scrabble upbringing and just through sheer dogged determination became an officer in the British forces before ultimately, of course, fighting on behalf of Virginia and the country at large in the Revolution. But a lot of patriotism is the point. I hope you felt it as much as I did. Not everybody felt patriotism on the American left, though. Chuck Todd, very, very angry about it. We start there this morning. Chuck Todd in 361 here, Aaron. Oh, man, is he angry? He's just furious about all of it. And most of the left furious about all of it. You probably saw the social media posts. They were mad about even flags flying. Here's Chuck Todd.
There's the America 250 celebration that he completely co-opted and made it a Trump-branded spectacle, literally driving people away. Fewer people came to Washington, not the white supremacists. They felt welcome. But fewer regular Americans decided to come because he just made it less. He basically made it that if you showed up to an event in Washington, you were endorsing him. He tried to make the America 250 an endorsement of him. And you know what? Plenty of people are like, I'm endorsing America, the idea. I'm not celebrating your fat ass. I know, I got a little bit. It's just so insulting what he's done to us. It's so insulting. He gets to insult us with small, stupid playground. And then the rest of us, if you fight back, you look like the smaller one, right?
You know, I can't help but first just notice, Aaron, is that a FanDuel logo over his shoulder? I've never seen a moment of Chuck Todd since he left Meet the Press, so I don't know what he's doing anymore. It looks as though he's in his office or his room or basement or something. Is that I think that's a FanDuel logo. Yeah. So is he sponsored by a sports betting app?
Probably.
That's my, how Meet the Press has fallen. Sponsored by FanDuel. So he's sitting in his basement, sponsored by a sports betting app. Good for Chuck. All right, a little more. Just seething over there. He's so angry about America 250. He's angry at who the president is, folks. As we've long established, the American left is upset that their guy isn't president of the United States. Not that their guy was actually president of the United States. We all know that infirm husk was running nothing. And we all know that pretend vice president, had she been successful, heaven help us, wouldn't have been running anything either. But boy, he's mad. And he continues to let us know from his FanDuel cave on a second day.
I'm so angry and feel betrayed. I do. I feel betrayed as an American by him on this. Constitution is not perfect, but it gives us a way to keep going. It gives us structure for disagreement. It gives us a method for repair. It gives us the possibility of becoming better without pretending we were always good. It makes some of the same promises that some religious texts do for people. And this is why I'm so pissed off. Not because I love the country less, but because I love the idea of America enough to resent seeing it cheapened by this man. America deserved better at 250. Someday, I believe, it will get better.
In all sincerity, what's going on there with the shaking? Aaron, can you, I'm sorry, I just want to lean on your technical expertise. Is he suffering from tremors? Is it a Parkinson's thing? Is he bouncing his leg? Is he doing a tubing thing under the desk? Why is he bouncing, Aaron? Did you notice that?
I mean, yeah, he's bouncing. It can't be like a webcam shake or anything because the room is not moving. Just he is.
I've never seen a guy. He's literally bouncing like a popcorn popper while he's speaking. And by the way, reading, I don't know. Apparently he left his teleprompter at Meet the Press. He's also reading whatever, that very organic, seething monologue of his coming directly from something he wrote that he's apparently referencing below his camera because he has to keep reading it. Nothing speaks to how organically angry you are when your eyes are darting back down to your text as you read it. It's so phony. Everything about it is so phony. Sunny Hostin, Houston. The hens over at The View, they want you to know they're very mad too. In fact, they're so angry, they can barely even see an American flag and feel safe anymore. Kid you not, you probably heard a few people say some version of this over the last few days.
And I said this on this show many, many years ago, because this is my 10th year on the show. And I said there are times when I walk into a community and I see American flags all over the community, and I suddenly feel unsafe because there is a section of this country that has co-opted the American flag, and they equate being an American or an American flag with white supremacy. And that should never be the symbol of white supremacy, but they have weaponized.
Because the flag belongs to all of us.
It does belong to all of us. But those men were wearing a flag on their and I said this on.
Yeah, what can you do for that? I don't know. That's not even really worth the. Sometimes when people say, "I wish we just have more reasonable debate. I wish we could get along. I hear this from time to time still. People say, I just wish we could turn down the rhetoric. I wish the two sides could come together." Folks, when you are dealing with someone who sees the American flag as a symbol of white supremacy, what can you say to that person? What possible debate can be had? What possible logic can be shared? What shared point of interest have you as a jumping off point in a conversation with someone like that? For me, there isn't one. So you have to roll your eyes and dismiss it and hope that kind of thinking doesn't become prevalent. In places like New York, we know that it has. When you look at the current socialist mayor of New York City, in clip 64 here, Aaron, it is Zohran Mamdani, the Islamist, giving his own assessment of America's 250th birthday, as if anyone asked. In America's biggest, arguably most important city, or at least it once was, New York City, where Lady Liberty holds her torch. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This is where people came first to this country to immigrate here legally and join the American experiment. And now this guy runs that city.
Nearly a decade ago, I too felt what you feel. The joy of no longer being just a New Yorker, but an American too. You each hold a special power. The power to determine what America means. The powerful have always known their answer. America, in their view, is an arena of supremacy, where only a select few are allowed freedom, where not all are created equal. America, if you ask them, becomes less the more people it welcomes. America, they will tell you, belongs only to those with the right accent or the right shade of skin. The rest of us, they insist, should be grateful for merely being allowed to visit. How small they are, how weak, how unoriginal. At every moment in our past, those who led through exclusion and isolation have tried to win power and enrich themselves by turning us against one another. Division is the oldest trick in politics and the cheapest. But time and again, including 250 years ago, those forces of division have been vanquished by the forces of progress. As Thomas Paine once wrote, "This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty. Hither have they fled. And yet today, too many of our leaders do not believe in a vision of this nation as an asylum for the persecuted, but rather as one that persecutes those seeking asylum. As we mark 250 years, what do we see? We see a city of contradictions within a nation of contradictions. We see the wealthiest country in the history of the world, one where children go to sleep hungry while the world's first trillionaire hungers for more. We see monopolies that dominate every industry and oligarchs who buy elections. We see masked agents terrorizing our streets, eating food cooked by our undocumented neighbors before spiriting them away in unmarked vans. We see a nation whose immense wealth has been built by those with calloused, dirt-streaked hands, those who toil on factory floors and chisel into stone. And we see a nation that has allowed so much of that wealth to be held instead in the soft hands of a precious few. Yes, we see America in a health insurance industry that exploits the sick, but that is not all we see when we look for America. We see it too in the nurse who works a double shift and then stops on her way home to check on an ailing neighbor. Yes, we see America in corporate landlords for whom negligence is a business model. We see it too in the father who tucks his children into bed beneath a ceiling stained with leaks, who wakes before dawn to go to work and still believes his country can do better by his family. Yes, we see America when we spend our tax dollars on bombs and bailouts, when we sell our elections to the highest bidder. Yet we see it just as clearly in every American who still believes this country belongs to we, the people. We see America each time neighbors link arms with neighbors,
I can't
without
listen to it
asking how
anymore,
long they have.
Okay, Aaron, please, I just can't. It's torture. And I'm in too good of a mood after the 250th birthday. Although, could I ask quickly, Aaron, one last technical question. I know you're not a set designer. Can you explain to me why the mayor of New York is sitting at a desk that appears to be turned around facing the camera? Why is he not sitting behind a desk that should be turned around the other way, or am I making that up?
Yeah, that set design is very weird because, like, you pointed out the desk, but also his back is right up against a fireplace. It's really weird.
It's just the strangest. He's got these hostages standing around him holding the American flag, not smiling, and then he's sitting at a desk that appears to be, I mean, I have a desk with drawers in my office at home, and it is the drawers are on the side of where he would be seated. Not that way. So I'd be very curious. Maybe the front of the desk is scuffed up and they didn't want to show it. Maybe that's the best they've got, so they didn't want to show the scuffed up front. I don't know. Well, at any rate, it's ironic, isn't it? Interesting that Zohran Mamdani talks about how the politics of division have always been used to turn fellow Americans of one another, and yet that thing that was going to drone on, and I could no longer listen to, that's exactly what he is. That's what he does. That's what's getting elected in left-wing enclaves in this country. And it's on the march. It's very serious. You know, and while I know the 4th of July is a few days behind us now, and we've now officially turned 250 years old, you can see it. The American left has never been more unhappy and more angry and more unhinged about who this country is and our optimism and hope for the future in it. 250 years ago, in the city of Philadelphia, a handful of really remarkable people changed the entire course of history. And it wasn't by inventing a new government or system of government. It was by declaring a very simple ancient truth. And this is what the likes of Zohran Mamdani willfully ignore and try to get voters to forget. The ancient truth that our founders codified, very simply, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That sentence changed the world. Before America, governments generally claimed that your rights or individual rights flowed from whoever was ruling, whoever was on top. And don't make any mistake, a guy like Zohran Mamdani, that's exactly what he wants. He believes that everyone's rights, everything anyone enjoys, flows directly from him as the supreme leader of New York City. And if he can engineer it that way, he will. The founders, however, turned that whole notion upside down. They said rights come from God. That's it. They don't come from government leaders or kings or mayors. Government only exists to protect the rights that came to you from God. And that, folks, is the most revolutionary political idea that was ever written, ever. Every political debate eventually comes down to one single question. Who's in control of your life? Who owns your life? You ever ask that question rhetorically? Now, people of faith will say, as Christians, well, Jesus Christ owns my life. No, I understand that. As a spiritual matter, that's true. But here, on earth, as you navigate your day-to-day life, your rights, we believe, come from God. At least those of us who are sane and believe in a creator. If you don't believe in a creator, then from whom do your rights come? Who owns your life? And you have to answer that question. Government officials. They tell you what you can and can't do, what rights you will and won't have, what freedoms you will or won't enjoy. You see, if you don't believe in a creator, then you only believe in man. You only believe that anything you enjoy, your rights and your freedoms, only come because you're allowed to have them. That's why the belief in a creator is so important. And that's why the founders codifying that is so important. And it's what, again, makes guys like Zohran Mamdani so dangerous. They don't want people believing that. They want you to believe that the right leader, a benevolent leader, will come along and gift you everything you want. And they'll take care of your every need as long as you empower them. That's what makes them so dangerous, of course. And so as we look in the rearview mirror at the 4th of July celebration and 250 years, it's not just celebrating calendars. We're choosing now between two very different answers to the question of who's going to run the future, who controls your life, who owns and is responsible for your freedoms and your natural right. One answer says that your life belongs to you. It's your life. You get to control it. You dictate the terms of it. You get to worship freely and speak freely. The other vision says your life belongs to the state, to the collective, Zohran Mamdani. And look, we have history behind us here. It's not like we don't understand both directions. Both paths have been chosen. History has tried both of those options. Kings have claimed that your life belongs to the crown. That's why we fought a revolution. Empires claimed that your freedoms belonged to the empire. It's biblical, actually, and beyond. Every collectivist movement has claimed it belongs to the state. Cuba still believes that. America said exactly the opposite, however. America begins with the individual, and collectivism, as you understand now, begins with the state. And it's why every political debate eventually returns to the same question. Who's in charge of you? Who runs your life? Who owns your life? Think about it. Just apply it in your day-to-day life, across the board, taxes. How much of what you earn do you get to keep? Who determines that? How much of what you earn do you get to keep? How about speech? How freely can you say what you think? And who gives you that right? Property. How much of what you build can the government control? What are you comfortable with? How about your business, if you run one or created one? How about your kids' education? Your future in general? Who decides that stuff? The point is, if you own your life, the government's job is pretty darn simple. Protect your freedoms, your natural gifted freedoms from a creator. Protect those. That's your government's job, period, full stop, and then get out of the way. However, if collectivists like Zohran Mamdani and the American left own your life, and they get to tell you and dictate how and when and where you'll go and how much you'll earn and how much freedom you'll enjoy, in the interest of fairness, if the government is in control of your life, then your rights become just permissions. And permissions, as you remember from being a kid, perhaps, I know I did, remember, if you were driving at age 16 and maybe you got a ticket or you got into some kind of trouble, what would they do? They'd take the keys away. Zohran Mamdani wants to behave like a parent taking your keys away to the car. And your rights under people like Zohran Mamdani and the American left, they think they're just merely permissions. And permissions, again, as a parent, they can just be taken away from you. And we have seen where that road leads, whether in the Soviet Union or Mao's China or Cuba or countless other collectivist experiments. The pattern is always the same. The state claims authority over speech, property, faith, and eventually they claim authority even over the family itself. Millions have paid the price under regimes that believe just that. Now, listen, I support President Trump personally because I know he understands the original American promise. I believe that President Trump trusts citizens more than bureaucracies. I think President Trump trusts families more than government. He certainly trusts entrepreneurs more than central planners. And he believes in freedom over control. And there's not a single person in this country, if they're honest, no matter how lunatic, if they're honest, there's not a single person that can say President Trump has taken any freedom away from them. Those instincts of President Trump's reflect the philosophy that gave birth to this nation. I'm grateful, frankly, that he's presiding over this 250th celebration over the last week. Ronald Reagan once reminded us that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Well, we're that generation. On July 4th of 1776, our founders answered the greatest political question ever asked, and it was very, very simple. As I just stated, who owns your life? Who controls your life? Who runs your life? And the founders codified that. They answered that 250 years ago. You own your life. You do. Under God, with God's blessing and God's gift. You own your life. You control your future. Your rights come from God. And that answer, codified by our founders, made America possible to begin with. And now you've heard all of this dreck that I just played for you, the Sonny Hostins and the Chuck Todds and the Zohran Mamdanis. And you realize, again, just a generation away, this thing teeters in the balance. There are always people that would love nothing more than to see collectivism rise again. So we've got our work cut out for us. Let's make sure that this celebration we've just enjoyed, this great American experiment, let's make sure it stays intact so that we can answer that same question. Who owns your life? Who's in control of you? We can answer it the same way for the next 250 years. But there's opposition on the march, and we've got our work cut out for us. That's why this fall and every election thereafter is so critically important. Jonathan Swan, in clip 60 here, Aaron, had something interesting to say about President Trump. I don't know that Swan's necessarily, I think he's an Axios guy. He's not necessarily a huge fan of President Trump's, but he has to acknowledge that while Chuck Todd is shaking with anger at President Trump presiding over the 250th, it's undeniable the political presence that he is. And I think history will long note that we were at a real inflection point in this country. And President Trump symbolized something wildly different than a Zohran Mamdani. And I'm personally grateful that he's presiding over the country. Swan has to acknowledge it, as much as it may pain him. Nothing quite like him, may never be again.
People who try to mimic Trump or be mini Trumps often fail. Donald Trump is a figure of such almost historic charisma as a mass, in terms of his mass appeal, his ability to create a visceral connection with his voters, that he managed to paper over all these divisions in the party in a way that I'm not sure other politicians could get away with.
Yeah, Maggie, you're nodding. Jump in.
Yeah, look, Donald Trump is a sui generis figure, and that is part of what we write about in the book. I mean, the comeback that he made in 2024, it is hard to see anybody else doing that, Casey, and you've covered him for a long time as well.
People who try to mimic Trump.
And they hate it. They really hate it. He's a populist. He's selling freedom, though, unlike Zohran Mamdani, who's selling collectivism. They're entirely different. Very popular, though. I will confess, somebody asked me recently, they said, President Trump, he complimented Zohran Mamdani, Chris. What do you think about that? I said, well, let's be clear what he was complimenting. President Trump wasn't complimenting Zohran Mamdani's governing philosophy or Islamism. He was tipping his hat to the fact that he is a political showman, just a different breed. It's like a prize fighter. You want to beat the guy in the ring, but you have to acknowledge his reputation, his strength, his resume of success. If you're going head to head with somebody who's also very successful politically, you have to acknowledge their success, figure out how to defeat it, but you got to respect it. President Trump respects people who play hard and play ball to win. And Mamdani, as loathsome as his message is, it's catching on. Trump is right to key into it. And by the way, I would just say to Republicans broadly, if you misunderstand or underestimate what Mamdani and others like him are selling, you do so at your own peril. This is a deadly serious time. So yes, you should respect it. You should acknowledge it. You should say, wow, that's, he's clearly making a compelling message to a whole lot of Americans, and that should scare the hell out of us for all the reasons that I just laid out. And there is a huge appetite for what President Trump is selling. There's also a huge appetite for what Zohran Mamdani is selling. Is it a jump ball? I don't think so, not yet. Could I see a day quickly where it becomes a 50-50 proposition that we get a Mamdani or a Trump? Horrifying. But I think we're getting closer. And it's, again, of course, why the American left would love to get rid of the Electoral College. Keep in mind that the Zohran Mamdanis of the world, elected in places like New York City, huge population centers, or the Karen Basses in LA, huge population centers, if the American left could do it, and they'd love to, why do they always make the argument about the popular vote every year? For anyone who ever says to you, this Electoral College thing, what the hell is this? Why do we have this? We don't need this. Let's just go to the popular vote. That seems most fair. I caution you, if you don't live in New York City, if you don't live in Washington, D.C., if you don't live in L.A., I assume if you live in those places, it's either because you make the best money there or you are a left-winger or you embrace the politics of that place. But if you choose not to live in those places, if you live in what is derisively called flyover country, if you live in the South, if you live in Mississippi, you live in Idaho, you live in Missouri, you live in Texas, and you don't like living under blue state government, blue city government, the American left wants Electoral College abolished and popular vote instated so that, very simply, when there's a national election, who drives it? New York, L.A., Boston, Washington, D.C., all blue cities. Population centers. They want mob rule. And that's, it's look, that is for a Zohran Mamdani, that's something that they will lean in on. So again, I say, you got your work cut out for you. So let's pivot to what President Trump is trying to do, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, trying to do here in number 65 here, Aaron. Trump accounts. I was fortunate enough for Heartlander News, as a matter of fact, to head to Washington, D.C. earlier this year and cover the launch of Trump accounts. And it's a really significant thing they've done. A free market principle, very simple. If you have a child, actually, if it's a child under 18, this is available to them as well. You can start putting tax-deferred money into an investment account that will grow, tied to the market, for a period of their 18 years of life. I think there's a withdrawal at age 18, or I don't remember exactly. You'll need to look it up. It's easy to find. You go online and look up for Trump accounts. But if you got a baby, this is really advantageous for people that have babies and toddlers. $1,000 seed money put in this account, you can continue to contribute up to $5,000 a year, and it can grow with interest, tax-free. So if you have a baby right now or a toddler, and you put up to $5,000 a year in this account, and it grows tied to the market, your child, by the time they're in their late teens, early 20s, they're sitting on six figures. And that can continue to can grow and compound. And my point is, the Trump administration, Scott Bessent, President Trump, they're talking about and celebrating the free market. Zohran Mamdani, on the other hand, is selling something distinctly different. He's telling you the system is rigged. There's no point in investing in your future. Let me handle it. I'll take from people who have made a lot of money and make sure you're cared for. That's not what Trump is selling here. And I wanted you to hear it here in clip 65. Here's President Trump urging parents to get involved in Trump accounts and why they're so important. Listen.
But if parents have not done so already, and they are doing so in record numbers, they should go right away to trumpaccounts.gov and sign their child up for a free investment savings account. And again, a lot of people are people that are uninvolved in terms of they don't have the children, but or their children are older, but they're putting millions and millions of dollars into the accounts of poor children, financially poor children. And The parents can't even believe what's happening. So it's an amazing thing. But parents, loved ones, churches, and generous companies and individuals will be able to contribute funds to these accounts to grow throughout the child's life. And again, if we have a good market like we do now, they're going to become actually very rich. They'll have hundreds of thousands of dollars. Think of that. Think of it, a child that has no money can have hundreds of thousands of dollars at a very, very young age. Accounts could grow to be worth numbers that nobody ever thought even possible.
It's a big deal. And it's a distinctly different vision of the future than one, again, that Zohran Mamdani and the socialists that have been elected here recently see. They don't want to talk about that. By the way, I would just throw in for good measure, this is something that ought to be looked at for younger people in the Social Security future. Now, older people, this scares to death because they think when any politician starts to talk about this, you're suggesting doing away with Social Security or taking it away. I certainly don't mean that, and no politician who's serious believes that you can take Social Security away from people who are in retirement or close to retirement. But I have a 21, 20-year-old, and 18-year-old kids. They're not. No serious person thinks Social Security is going to be solvent and around for them. So imagine taking what's taken out of your paycheck if you're a working professional. Imagine taking that money and instead of putting it into this fictitious Social Security account in Washington, D.C. that's already been spent by politicians, imagine taking that out of your check and putting it into a market-based account. Do you know how wealthy we'd all be if you and I had a career where the federal government was taking money out of our paycheck and putting it into a market-tied account? I mean, when I started working professionally in the late 90s, after I graduated from high school, what was the market? I don't know if you follow the markets closely or not. What is it at 50 now? I mean, I don't even think it was at 20 in the early 2000s. Might have been in the teens. I shudder to think in my 30 years of working, roughly, if what had been taken out of my paycheck and put into the private sector, into the market, into a market-based account, what had been taken out of my check was put in there, I would probably be sitting on a fortune right now. But instead, I'm waiting on some sort of funding formula at age 65 or 70 or 72 that rewards me if I wait longer to take it and spend it and use it. Money that's been taken out of my check since I started working. It's really kind of depressing and infuriating when you think about it. Central planning. Who owns your life? Who does better for you? Your own freedoms and your own choices, or government running it for you? How's government doing for you in your retirement? It's very, very frustrating. Here's number 66, just a little more. I call him Street Tough Scott Bessent. I love a Treasury Secretary who's kind of a nerd, sort of a number cruncher, but also he's willing to throw a punch if he has to. I just think the guy's so funny. Here's Scott Bessent talking about that very thing, the American dream for every child.
The American dream belongs to every child, and today we are equipping the next generation with the right to claim their rightful share of it. Through Trump accounts, our president is creating an ownership economy where all citizens become shareholders. 38% of American families do not have any exposure to our great equity markets, but with Trump accounts over time, we can get that number to zero. Already 6 million American children have signed up. 86% of them with families earning less than $200,000. U.S. Treasury, 1.4 million of those accounts will receive $1,000 from the U.S. Treasury to seed the accounts. The American dream belongs.
Yeah. So it's, and again, I just say to you, if you have children who are young, 18 and under, you can take advantage of this. And the younger your child is, the more aggressively you can take advantage of this for the, I know parents often talk about setting aside college funds for their kids or whatever. Quite frankly, were it me, I'd be putting money in these Trump accounts for young kids and babies rather than setting it aside for a college fund. Because quite frankly, this Trump account, it grows. You can use that for college if you want, or a home if they choose instead of college. This just makes all the sense in the world, because if you find yourself at the end of the road with your kids at age 18, they're seniors in high school and they graduate, take it from me. Sometimes they don't really want to go to college. They don't particularly like school. and you've squirreled away all this money for little John or little Jane to go off to a 4-year university that costs $1 gazillion, and they don't want to go, and they're not a particularly great student, or there's just not a real rate of return anymore for sending a kid away for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for a degree, because there's not a job commensurate to pay for that kind of price tag. So put it in a Trump account instead, and then have the discussion in 18 years as to whether or not you want to spend it on college or a down payment on a home, or just let it continue to grow through the span of their life. That's a real gift you can give your child. I think far more than squirreling it away in some college savings account. That's my opinion. Nobody asked me. And that's the great thing about the United States of America. God bless it. You can do what you please. Now, if our central planning government had their way, they'd tell you exactly where it's going to be put and invested and spent, and how it would be spent and when. I know where I'd prefer to live. I know under which business model I would prefer to live. Some good news today on the economic front. Toyota is set to build some $3.6 billion worth of investment in a Texas plant and shifting their truck production from Mexico. The Toyota Motor Corporation said this week they will build a new $3.6 billion auto plant in Texas. The Japanese automaker said that the new $2.5 million square foot building will be located on its San Antonio manufacturing campus, will open by 2030, and create 2,000 jobs. So that's huge. More manufacturing coming on shore, headed to, and by the way, as states compete in the country for business, Texas continues to be a destination where people want to go. Why? Well, I don't know. Look at how it's governed. You notice they're not moving to Boston. They're not moving to Illinois. They're moving to red states. President Trump also announced this week that Walmart will lower prices on several products, including beef. Trump said on a Truth Social post that Walmart would drop the price of a pound of ground beef by 15%, among many other products, at his administration's request. He praised the retailer as a truly patriotic company, urged others to follow. I read, quote from the president, "I've just been informed that one of the biggest, best, and smartest retailers in America, Walmart, will be lowering prices by a lot at my administration's request to celebrate our country's 250th birthday. Walmart will, in particular, be dropping the price for a ground beef pound by about 15%, among many other products." Huge deal for many Americans. So why Walmart ultimately did that, I don't know. PR stunt, I don't know. But good news, it seems to me. ICE has arrested another foreign national charged with voting in multiple federal elections, because we're told by the American left this never happens, you know. There really is no voter fraud out there. Well, ICE has arrested an Australian national now charged with voting in multiple federal elections. Somebody named Denise Migliori, a lawful permanent resident from Australia, is accused of knowingly making false claims of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Authorities allege she cast ballots in 2022 and 2024 in Louisiana. And we don't know who necessarily she voted for, but she voted. And that's the point. Are people voting illegally? Well, yeah, it turns out they are. Also this week, the defense seeking to block the video of this guy, Tyler Robinson, who assassinated Charlie Kirk, it is alleged. They're saying that they believe it would play a big role in the trial, and the publication of it in the courtroom would seriously impact their ability to get a fair trial. The preliminary hearing of Tyler Robinson entered its second day yesterday, with the Utah courtroom being shown never-before-seen footage of a person believed to be Robinson moving around the Utah Valley University campus on the day of the shooting. Tuesday's hearing began with continued testimony from David Hull, a Utah Department of Public Safety peace officer who was working as an investigator at the time of the shooting. His testimony began with the airing of footage showing what is said to be Robinson's movements throughout the campus before and after the shooting. Also, you've probably seen the footage of the judge watching the physical assassination of Charlie and flinching at the moment of impact. I've never seen that video, to be perfectly honest with you. And I guess it exists out there, Aaron. I don't know. Have you ever, and I'm sorry to be gruesome, I don't mean to linger on this too long. I'm just curious. That is never something that I sought to see. I never went to see it. Some people, and I'm not judging you if you were, I'm just saying some people are inclined to go watch things like that, maybe for impact or just to see it for themselves. That was something I purposely tried to ignore. I never wanted to physically see it. So I've still to this day never seen what I guess exists out there, or I've been told maybe many people have asked that it be taken down, or many platforms have ordered it down. I don't know the status of that today. Do you?
I think it's really hard to find. I actually did see it.
You did?
Like very early on, probably minutes or 30 minutes after the event actually happened, and I didn't even mean or know what I was watching. And I remember having a very explosive, visceral reaction. It was terrible.
It's pretty grisly, as I understand it. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's a clear picture. It's not grainy. I mean, it's very high resolution and clear what happened.
It was bad.
Yeah, I'm glad I never had to see it. But I mean, when you see a hardened judge sit there in his chair and watch that video and visibly jump, it's. But anyway, this trial is ongoing, and I will say some of the most loathsome people are coming out of the woodwork to talk about it right now, whose names I'm not going to really discuss here, and I'm not going to get into it, but man, there are some really dark and odious people that are trying to capitalize on this trial to make names for themselves, as they have since Charlie was killed. They continue to do so, and I think continue to show the repugnant level to which they will stoop just to promote themselves. But I digress. I won't spend too much more time on that. Also, on to a very curious story of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, Kentucky senator, who said he's no longer going to run for office again. I think it would have been his 8th term or something like that. He announced his retirement. He has apparently fallen ill. It's not entirely clear what the state of affairs is. There were some reports over the holiday weekend that he was actually found unconscious, not over the holiday weekend, but sometime before. As you know, he was taken to the hospital in an emergency situation I don't know, a few weeks ago. He has not been serving in the Senate. Nobody really knows exactly what his health condition is, other than he has not been president of the United States Senate for business for a bit now. And media on both left and right have raised questions, says Heartlander News, about former President, about former President Trump's labor secretary, Elaine Chao. Now, Elaine Chao, who used to work for the president in his first administration, is married to Mitch McConnell. The questions center on the information vacuum surrounding Chao's husband, Mitch McConnell. As I just said, McConnell has remained hospitalized for more than 3 weeks after an emergency, while Chao reportedly traveled to Beijing days later to meet with the vice president there. Previously, Chao was, I'm sorry, I said labor, I meant transportation secretary. Pardon me. Elaine Chao was the transportation secretary under Donald Trump and George W. Bush. The question now, they write at Heartlander News, is about national security. Townsend, one of the journalists covering this piece, said, given McConnell's condition, about the security of classified intelligence legislation and other sensitive material McConnell has kept, and given the timing of Chao's meeting with China's vice president, what exactly was discussed? Emergency dispatch audio released by Townsend and reviewed by mainstream news media indicated responders were called to McConnell's Washington home for an unconscious person. Other recordings referenced cardiac arrest and CPR. McConnell's office has released only limited information. It's not good. I don't like the look of it. And if I'm going to be completely fair here, let's go to clip number 69, Aaron. Sabrina Singh brings up something that is 100% fair, because I will tell you, as a guy who was doing a regular radio show every day during this period of time, I pounded and pounded and pounded on the issue that Sabrina is about to bring up here. And it's a fair one. I don't typically agree with her on much, but this is a fair point she makes. Listen.
Multiple shows together where you have brought up Secretary Austin's hospitalization when I was in the administration, and you were very critical of us on the handling, and the secretary, of his handling, and you were incredibly critical of him not being transparent with the American people and the public about his condition. And I find it just so interesting that you're not being critical of a sitting senator who represents the state of Kentucky not being transparent with his constituents. He's been able to call Thune, Barrasso, and you,
Mm-hmm.
but we have no idea why he's hospitalized. But you were so critical of Secretary Austin, who did disclose why he was hospitalized, and it was for 5 days. We are at almost a month, and we have no idea why Mitch McConnell has been hospitalized, and you're not being critical. You're not concerned by that?
Well, of course, I'm concerned about my friend. I've known him since I was 16 years old. So if you're
You don't
asking
think
me
you
if
should
I'm
disclose
if you're
why
asking me
he's
if I'm concerned,
hospitalized?
if you want to be ornery and mean about me being concerned about my friend, you're welcome to do it. He's not the head of the United States Armed Forces, who apparently went AWOL
He is
while
the
he was Secretary of
sitting
Defense.
U.S. Senator for your home state.
And do you think
For
that-
your home
and-
state, for the people, they don't
and you
deserve.
don't see the difference in those two positions?
There is no difference. They are elected to public office.
No difference.
There is no difference. They should be held to the same exact standard. Secretary Austin
All
did
right.
disclose his condition. Mitch
Hold on, I have
McConnell
one
should
more
too.
question for Scott, and then I want to bring Al into this conversation. Scott, was this an audio call, a FaceTime call? Does McConnell
Audio.
FaceTime ever?
I can't say that I've ever FaceTimed with him. I do get text messages from him, and we do talk on the phone, but I think it's always audio.
Okay.
So look, I know Scott Jennings. I like Scott a lot, and I'm not picking on Scott here. As Scott said, he is a personal friend of Mitch McConnell since he was a teenager, so he has a personal relationship with him, and that's fine. But I do have to agree to an extent with Sabrina Singh. Now, Scott's point that Mitch McConnell is not Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of War, is not the same as a United States Senator from Kentucky. They are different jobs. Lloyd Austin, just so you remember, if you don't, that Lloyd Austin, as the Secretary of Defense under the pretend President Joe Biden, while we were in the middle of a war with, as much as it takes, as long as it takes in Ukraine, among other things, Lloyd Austin had a cancer surgery and left his post and put someone else in charge and did not tell the White House. Now that's not an editorial comment, folks. You can look that up, and I hope that you do, just so that you remind yourself of the severity of that statement. That is an important thing I just said, and most people didn't even know it happened. And I hounded the administration while I was on my show during the Biden years, pounding and pounding on that. I found it outrageous that the guy that literally is in charge of the United States Armed Forces walked away from his post and didn't tell the commander-in-chief. And then, after he had the cancer surgery, he came home, and apparently there were some complications, and there is a 911 call tape that exists out there, and you can go look this up too. Not making any of this up. It's always important. I think when people hear people say things like this, they go, I don't remember that. That sounds made up. Please go look it up. Don't take my word for it. This 100% happened. So Lloyd Austin leaves his post, goes and has this cancer surgery, puts someone else in charge, doesn't tell the White House he's doing it. He tried to keep it a secret that he had cancer at all. Has the surgery, comes home, then has some complications. He has an aide call 911 to send an ambulance to his home. And on that recording and during that time, could you please not do lights and sirens? Could you please we don't want to call attention to it. They tried to make even the emergency after his secret surgery. They tried to keep that secret too, without notifying the President of the United States. So do I think Lloyd Austin is the same as Mitch McConnell? I do not. I think the Secretary of Defense is a far more significant post. And I think, by the way, just sheer chain of command and the way our system of government works is the Secretary of War must relay to the commander-in-chief of our armed forces if he is going to be away from his post. I'm pretty sure, I'll have to defer to our military men and women watching here, whether that's right or not, but I'm pretty sure it's probably a military code thing. I think it's a law. Like you don't get to just walk away from your post. I mean, I know what would happen to a regular entry-level guy if he or she just walked off their post in the field. That's, as I understand it, that's punishment, like jail time. So having said all that, I do think Sabrina Singh, as much as I can't stand the woman's politics, has a point here. The people of Kentucky deserve to know the state of their United States Senator's health. And if, in fact, he has gone unconscious or had cardiac arrest or is not able to vote and do his job, I think Kentucky citizens deserve to know that. And I think the Republican Party, I think Leader Thune, I think people in charge ought to demand it. Because right now, with a very thin majority and a Senate that's not getting a whole lot done for the Republican Party, I'm not in the mood to play games with this stuff. I don't wish Mitch McConnell ill. Mitch McConnell, to his credit, historically, I must give him credit for one thing. Mitch McConnell's the guy that's responsible for the makeup of the Supreme Court today. He used Harry Reid's blowing up of the filibuster for judges, and he applied it to the Supreme Court. So Mitch McConnell did, even though Amy Coney Barrett has turned out to be a colossal disappointment. Still in all, President Trump got 3 of his Supreme Court justices through the United States Senate because of Mitch McConnell. That is credit he's due. Having said that, he has become a Trump hater and an obstructionist for the remainder of President Trump's time and in this latest term. And now he's perhaps incapacitated, and his wife is traveling to China. What the hell's going on? Sabrina Singh is right. It is not defensible. And if we're to be consistent, if we were critical of people like Lloyd Austin being out of commission, and I was, well, then we've got to be critical here too, it seems to me. All right, Graham Plattner. I would be remiss if I did not tackle this. Old Graham has run into some trouble here. We've been covering him now for a few weeks here at Heartlander News. You can go to heartlandernews.com and read more about him. As you know, Old Graham running for Senate in Maine versus Republican Susan Collins. And Old Graham, as it turns out, for years and years and years, had a Nazi tattoo on his chest that he claims he got when he was drunk. And, because who doesn't? I mean, who among us hasn't gotten liquored up and gone out to get Nazi regalia tattooed on your chest? It's just so stupid. Of course he knew what it was, but he claims for 10 years it sat on his chest and he had no idea what it was. And that a girlfriend told him one day, "Hey, that's a Nazi thing on your chest, did you?" "Huh? Really? I just thought it was cool looking. I didn't know." It's just insulting. Of course he knew what it was. So he then tattooed over it and whatever. Well, now it's come to light that he's a bit of a scumbag, maybe a big scumbag, allegedly. Women are coming forward right and left saying that he's done a lot of loathsome stuff, and it's pretty fascinating. Reports have gone back and forth that he's going to quit. Old Bernie Sanders himself, who went up there to Maine to stump for him, is now saying he should probably step aside. Most Democrat leaders are saying, "Graham, you're a problem. You really ought to step aside." He seems right now like he's thinking about it, but leaning, no, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to see. If he hangs tough and rides this out, this will change politics forever. Because if the Democrat Party, who claims to believe all women, the Democrat Party, who is the party of I am woman, hear me roar, the Democrat Party who claims that we're to believe all women, hashtag me too. That's the Democrat Party mantra, right? Well, now multiple women have stepped forward to say they have been raped or accosted, allegedly, by Graham Plattner. Here's how some of this played out. Let's start with number 370 here. Fox News having a little fun with former Congressman from California, Eric Swalwell, who had his own problems with sexual peccadillos and abuse in office. Take a listen.
That you see and hear from me directly. I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. These allegations of sexual assault are flat false. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false. I'm going to spend time with my family and friends, and I appreciate those who have reached out to me to show support. We are taking the time to reflect on the best path forward for the state that I love, the people that I love.
Mark.
That you see.
In case of sexual assault allegations, break glass. They've got a script locked away and ready to go, apparently. Pretty good. An update from the Democrat Party's executive director, Devin Murphy Anderson, on the Maine state race. Give me number 71 here, Aaron. Here's the Democrat. Boy, what an unenviable job this guy has. The guy that runs the Democrat Party in Maine, now stuck with this guy, Graham Plattner. He's their pick. He's their nominee. Nothing they can do about that. And so here's old Devin trying to explain, or I'm sorry, it's a her. Of course it is. Trying to explain why, I'm sure this rape thing is something we can get past.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to provide you all an update on the U.S. Senate race here in Maine. As you know, the Maine Democratic Party has been working around the clock to develop a process to replace our U.S. Senate nominee that is open, inclusive, transparent, and fair. The integrity of this process is just as important as the outcome, and we are committed to ensuring that Democrats across our state can have confidence in both. Unfortunately, Graham Plattner's team has repeatedly reached out to us in an attempt to put their thumb on the scale of what this process looks like. We have repeatedly reiterated to Graham Plattner's team that they have no role in determining our next Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate, nor in determining what this process looks like. We have also reiterated that Graham Plattner must drop out of this race so that Democrats in Maine can focus on defeating Susan Collins this November. We look forward to making this process public as soon as Graham Plattner formally withdraws from this race.
Okay. Well, I actually hadn't heard what she had to say. I'm impressed. All right. So old Devin says that he's got to step down and they're going to pick a new nominee and he's not going to have anything to say about it. Okay, good. I'll be popping the popcorn. And that'll do it today from America's Heartland. Be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news throughout the week. From an honest, straightforward approach to journalism, heartlandernews.com is where you'll find it. Be sure to subscribe to Heartlander News here on YouTube as well. Give us a like, comment too if you're so inclined. Hope that you will. Glad to have you along. Hope you had a great 4th of July holiday. Good to be back with you, and we'll see you next time right here on Heartlander News.